Hi, it's Dr. Maggie Perry here with Tell Me What You're Proud Of. This is the third and last session that I'm having here with Jim. So Jim just listened to the consultation that I had with Dr. Anya Schmitz, and we will talk about that or other things that Jim would like to talk about. So where should we get started?
Yeah, just something that I'm proud of this week. It has to do with, I said earlier that I have a kind of chronic condition, and that, some of my content is there around health, but just separate from the health content, some of the symptoms sometimes would cause me to get really anxious because I was parsing them as symptoms of like an impending panic attack. So in other words, something like nausea or, dizziness or lightheadedness would show up, and I'd be like, oh no, like this, this is potentially the precursor to a panic attack. And I've been able to kind of shift my attitude on that recently, and conceptualize of those things when they come. So to just realize that those things aren't necessarily a symptom of an impending panic attack, but they might actually be just symptoms of the condition that I have, and that that it's kind of okay when those things come on to just treat them a little more neutrally. Just to look at, so the kind of self-talk that I've been doing is, oh, I guess I'm not feeling well. This doesn't have to be related to a panic attack. It could just be that I am, overdoing it a little bit, and maybe I should take a break until I feel better, rather than the way that I had been thinking about it before. And this has been, really helpful, actually.
Okay, two questions for you. There's a lot of uncertainty there. How do you, number one, know that it isn't something more serious? And number two, how do you know it's not going to become anxiety?
Yeah, I guess I don't. I guess it's kind of a leap of faith thing. Like, I feel like, especially now that I'm having a different process around it, and that I'm expecting it to happen from time to time, and that my response to it can be not, oh no, I'm going to have a panic attack, or oh no, now I'm not going to be able to get a bunch of work done, or something like that. Like, choosing to have a different response initially has been really helpful.
And so tell me so that's great, because those uncertainties of how do I know that this isn't a part of my medical condition and indication that I'm getting much worse, or how do I know that this isn't going to become a panic attack, are uncertainties that you've had for years. So what has happened that you suddenly have an attitude shift?
I think it's just been connecting it back to the condition, rather than like this time last year I was getting this kind of lightheadedness and stuff like that, and I assumed it was all just a function of anxiety, rather than I've gotten a better understanding of that symptom in the course of the condition that I have. Like, it's actually a common symptom. I think that's been helpful, because at least around my condition, I've gotten to have quite a bit more compassion for myself around that over time, maybe more so than I do about anxiety in general.
How come?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it might just be, might just be cultural in a way. Like, I wish I could say that I had, pure compassion for myself and my anxiety, and that I don't view it as like a weakness or a failing. But I think that I must in some way, because with the health condition thing, it's a lot easier to go like, well, this isn't a personal, this isn't a personal failing. This is something that happened to me. Not something I'm doing to myself. Whereas that's often my attitude about anxiety as well, but I think in kind of a deep-seated way, or just the default way of thinking for me is that the anxiety stuff. I feel like maybe there's a lot of, I shouldn't have this, or it feels quite a bit different if I would attribute it to anxiety versus attributing it to the condition.
So I wonder if you had some of that thinking initially with your medical condition, where, um, you
Yeah,
know, right when you were diagnosed or before, I imagine, it was really wreaking havoc on your life. So like thinking like I shouldn't have this,
yeah,
it shouldn't have happened, must have been the initial reaction. Can you say more about your initial reaction?
yeah. It definitely was. Like I thought, that basically that my ability to deal with it would be a function of like my strength or my ability to persevere rather than something uh, external, rather than something about the condition itself, right? So yeah, no, I think early on, and so that's what I mean. I kind of had developed more muscle around talking to myself about my condition in a more compassionate way, and viewing it as something sad that happened, something I can be sad about, and something I can say is not particularly fair, and but then not blame myself for it. This is a genetic plus environmental thing. Like I didn't do anything, but then a lot of that same logic applies to anxiety actually as well. But somehow, um, I guess it's just a little bit harder, it's probably due to things like culture and stuff like that. I think it has been a little harder to be that forgiving with myself if the genesis of the feelings are anxiety. I think, but I'm not
And
awful at it either. I can, I'm much more compassionate with myself about my anxiety than I ever was.
And what do you mean by being that forgiving? Like if you were completely surrendering to a compassionate stance towards the experience of anxiety, what would you be doing differently?
I mean, I think I would. I think I would accept that that I don't, that it is not something that you have 100% of control over, right? That it can come, it can go, and that you can do things to get better at dealing with it. But like at the end of the day, there's a sort of biological predisposition towards it. That idea that that anxiety is a normal thing that lots of people feel, but that I probably have a stronger physical sensation from anxiety than a lot of people. That's been really helpful, just for keeping in mind that you know I think the surrender on that would look a lot more like that. That me just saying that like, well, this was the deck of cards that I got in terms of the sensitivity to this, and of course I'm going to um, find it really unpleasant if the sensations of anxiety are maybe unusually high for me. Um,
Yeah, and if I can just talk a little bit more both about that biological vulnerability and how challenging it is to recover. I really see recovery as including several different components. And so, first off, the first thing is really accepting that what you're experiencing is a biological vulnerability. And so, yes, anxiety is a normal, natural, healthy, and adaptive reaction to a threat or perceived threat. And so, everybody has fear circuitry. So, everybody has basically the same sensations and the same types of catastrophic thoughts under certain when they're triggered in certain ways. But it's true that under stress, not everyone's going to have unwanted, intrusive harm thoughts, or not everybody's going to get a rapid heartbeat, or, blushing is something that only happens to some people. So there's certainly some types of anxiety reactions that some people are more biologically vulnerable to than other people. But so once you kind of understand and accept that, you then have to cope, you then have to learn how to cope with the symptoms, which are the sensations, the thoughts, and the feelings, which I think we talk a lot about kind of doing exposure and wanting and being willing to experience the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. But I think a couple other components of recovery are also then learning how to cope with the fact that this could happen at any time, and kind of changing your self concept, like not in a way that is self-critical, but rather in a way that is accepting of the biological vulnerability that you have and now the skills that you're developing. And then I think processing what it means for the future. For some people, it's by the time they get to therapy, their anxiety has actually impacted where they go to school or what kind of work they do or what kind of relationships they have. So all of those things are like part of the recovery process from an anxiety disorder. And I kind of think about you're recovered or you're in maintenance when you accept it as a biological vulnerability. You know how to respond to the symptoms of your anxiety disorder, and then you've integrated into your life in a way that when it comes back, because it will, it doesn't blindside you or cause you to spiral into like shame and self-criticism.